If your Garmin Edge 1050 is too big, watch this video. Hi guys, welcome back. I'm Sela. Today I want to talk about this frames and gear computer mount specifically for the Garmin Edge 1050, and I'll be installing this on my NV SES Aero Stem. However, they have a variety of mounts for all kinds of bikes, so check them out. I'll have the link in my description. So long story short, the Garmin Edge 1050 is too big to go on my current mount, and when I search for a mount that will clear the Garmin 1050, this Frames and Gear was the only one that specifically says 1050 compatible. So I reached out to the company to see if they're offering any affiliate programs. They said not at the moment, but they were willing to send me the mount to use and to review, so I'll take that opportunity. As transparency as I am, I value my channel as well as I value their reputation. So everything I say in this video is based on my opinion. They did not tell me what to say. I'm gonna do the unbox, talk a little bit about the quality, weigh them, do the installation, talk about the usability, the strings, and some other stuff along the way as we go. I'll put some timestamp on the bottom if I figure out how to do that. So let's get started. So earlier it was a quick unbox to show you the mount, the GoPro adapter, which is sold separately by the way, and some hardware bolts that came in the bags. And we'll take a look at some close-up photos when everything is on the bike. I should mention that the GoPro adapter is made to be Aero, this specific version. I'll talk a little bit more about that momentarily. Let's put this on the scale. So we have 36 grams. GoPro adapter and the hardware and everything will be 43 grams or 46 grams. I'm piecing the mount and the GoPro adapter together, so two holes. You can either mount closer or further away from the steer tube, and I torque this to about 1 Newton meter. I'm now removing my stem cap by loosening the two bolts on the bottom first and finally the top bolt. Removing the old mount and installing the new one, and all of the bolts that came with the mount will have thread lock on them already. So, and now I'm torquing this to about 2 Newton meters. And now I'm doing a quick test just to make sure it really clears that 1050, and looks like it does with about 15 millimeters of clearance. So it's time to put everything back together, give it a little bit more of that fiber grip, and putting the stem cap back. So the top bolt goes in first, and that is to be torqued at about 8 to 10 Newton meters, and then you start with the bottom two bolts at about 6 Newton meters. And these two bolts will keep the angle in place, and I just torque these to about 1 Newton meter. And if you don't have a torque wrench, just make sure all of the bolts are snug. There's no torque specs on these. So the GoPro clamp seems a little loose, and that just means it needs a higher torque. My exposure light weighs about 200 grams including the mount, and I ended up torquing it to about 3 Newton meters to keep the light in place. As far as quality, I don't know much about CNC alloy, which this mount was made out of, but this material, this mount feels solid and on par with a couple of different high-end mounts that I've been using. I don't see any sharp edges or rough edges anywhere on the mount, or even at this junction here where the angle adjustment is happening. Now, I don't race, I don't count milligrams or trying to get the best airflow as possible, but I always appreciate the aesthetic and the engineering part of it. And this mount has most of that. It is very low profile. The aerodynamics really goes hand in hand with my bar and my stem together. And the fact that the angle can be adjusted to be parallel to my stem is also a nice feature. Now, if you're using this mount, let me know what your thoughts are, but that's my impression after riding with it. Let's talk about the important stuff, the usability and the strength. But let me make sure the bell is working before I do that. How did I do that? Well, the link should pop up now. If not, it should be in the description. So look for that if you're interested. The Garmin sits straight with about 15 to 20 millimeters of clearance to spare for the Edge 1060 when it comes out, or maybe not. The mount feels sturdy. They use 2 bolts for security, plus it only has about 30 degrees of angle adjustment. So let's assume the worst. If these bolts come loose or whatever, which is rare, it is not going to go flopping down on you. It will hang on there and just rattle. How about the payload? How much weight can you put on it? Well, most of the time I ride with my Garmin and my cyclic camera together. However, during the winter season, when I go on longer rides from sunset to sundown, for example, I like to carry my light instead of my camera. So this combination weighs a little over 400 grams, which is quite heavy for most racers. I have been using this mount for a little over 100 miles now, a few rides, and I've gone through some sections that were rough and there's no way to avoid them at the moment. I was bunny hopping a couple of times, so let's talk about that. I test rode this for about 10 miles on the trail and everything seemed to be fine. My Garmin and my light didn't move or shift at all. I did my first ride about 40 miles with some higher effort, faster pace, and everything seemed to be in place as well. The other ride was about 55 miles, easy pace, and nothing was out of the ordinary either. Both of these rides I had the Garmin and a cyclic camera at a time, so it's a little less weight, but it still falls within that 350 grams area. So as far as the payload goes, it handles just about what I need. On to the GoPro adapter. There are 2 versions, the Aero and the Standard. They did send me the Aero version, which is the more expensive one, so let's talk about it. As I mentioned earlier, the adapter can be mounted further or closer to the steer tube by choosing one of these holes here. And because of the Aero design, it sits even further out, and that allows me to do a couple of things. I can mount my light without rubbing the brake cables, and it has so much room that I can attach my bar bag now at the same time without rubbing. And that's a huge plus for me. With the previous mount, because it was shorter, the light would press into the bag and it just didn't feel right. So that solves that issue for me. My stem length is about 100 millimeters, by the way. Some may argue that when it sits further out, it is not as strong or it won't hold as much weight. Physically, it is true, but I have not seen any issues yet. And I did ask the company about the payload of what I carry, the Garmin plus the light, and they said that falls into the weight category that they recommend. So I'll stick with it for now. So that's about it. There's not a whole lot to talk about. It's one of those accessories that I'll set and I'll forget, and either it works or it doesn't. And so far looks like it's been working great for what I need it for. The quality looks and feels premium. The mount and the GoPro adapter are strong enough to hold quite a bit of weight. Although I don't talk much about the aerodynamics, I do appreciate the aesthetic and the slimmer profile, both the mount and the GoPro adapter. The 30-degree angle adjustment is a really nice feature for leveling the head unit or Garmin in my case. That was it. So hopefully that was helpful. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. I'll try to do the same. If anything changes in the future, I'll be sure to include the details in my description box. Other than that, have a safe ride. I'll see some of you guys on the road.